Hi, I'm back with another video, and this one's going to be slight informational. It's going to be informational slash rant because I was just watching the Porn Stars episodes with my son, where they sold Japanese swords and bought Japanese swords, and I just had to say something because it was driving me nuts as I was watching these. Just the incompetence with the etiquette and the handling and the naming and the identifying. I I can't wrap my head around. It's like nobody they like operate the business and like nobody bothered to pick up a freaking book and open a book and be like, what are the parts? What's some of the history behind this? How do we handle these? It was such a Bubba mentality of just ripping the sword sideways out of the scabbard and just like handling them with bare hands. I can't take it. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go over my one Yasukuni shrine sword, and I'll describe a little bit of history about that. We'll go over the names of the parts, some details, how to handle them, how to know, etc. So, here is my Yasukuni shrine sword fittings. These are just, the fittings that it came in. So, has a canvas field cover and, the traditional World War II Japanese fittings. These are the Shingunto fittings, not the Kyugunto fittings, the Shingunto fittings. We'll go over the fittings first because I heard this messed up too, and I can't believe it. This is a Tsuba, sword guard, the little things in here, the Seppa, the spacers, the Manuki. These are Manuki. This is the Fuchi, the collar, and the Kashira, the end cap, and the race skin underneath, the Samegawa. And this is how, because this is what drove me nuts. And this is how you pull the blade out of the scabbard. It's not like this. I handle it like, maybe it's because they're humongous and they're like, the sword is like this big to them. They're like, no, no, for God's sake, no. So like this. If it's tight, you don't rip it out of the scabbard like you're Rambo. Show you where you no. Look, if it's tight, just do this. Squeeze your fist. Oh, look, it loosens. It's okay. Nice and gentle. Slide it along the mune, looking down the sword the whole time so that you're not tilting it and sliding the side of the sword against the scabbard. So, like this, and at the end here, support it because if the whole scabbard tilts and you end up grinding the minucci, the front part of the blade, against the inside of the scabbard, then all you're doing is every single time you're pulling it out of the scabbard, dulling the front part of the blade. So pull this out, support it, look nice and gentle. That goes down. Now, if I'm going to touch the blade at all, I have just a simple tissue will do, a non-coated tissue. This is like as simple as you get. This is not like the Puffs Plus with the lotion or anything. Not around this house. So lay it on here, right? And then we could examine the blade. We'll examine this blade as is, the dimensions, the characteristics, etc. And then we could take off the handle and we'll go into more details there. So I'm also, if you notice, I'm trying to talk away from the blade because as you talk, actually, people don't want to, think about this, but it's kind of gross. Little particles of moisture are coming out of your mouth. So, and you may possibly your nose too. And you talk too close to a blade and you're like, and it gets on the blade. It's like little microscopic things that maybe could cause harm, that maybe add up over time. You don't want to take a chance. Why take a chance? All right, so I'll try to show as much detail as I can here. And this is characteristic of the Yasukuni Shrine swords, this curvature and the temper line. The temper line tended to be this plane, if you will, shallow straight Suguha temper line. And I think you could also see the temper in the point from there. Maybe this is a good angle to see the temper in the point. It all looks pretty simple. It's all meant to be pretty simple, basic, but also like an understated elegance. And I'm having a hard time bringing it up here to show you, but there is a distinct grain to this sword. It's a very tight, like very, very tight burlwood grain. If you look closely on the steel, you can see it. And as you can see, I'll try to show it from far away. This sword is also in a great state of polish. There's no flaws, nicks, openings, anything like that. It really is a high quality item, even inspected up close. So what we're going to do now is take off the handle and investigate the tang the right way. So again, if you're going to touch the blade at all, with a tissue, a non-coated tissue, and not blade down, obviously. Sometimes I've even seen that. That just drives me nuts. It's like, go ahead and cut your hand off. I'd love to see that. All right, so I have my brass sword hammer thing here, and you're going to push on the pin to push it out. If it doesn't work one way, push it another way. Oh, look, it's out. You don't ever have to force anything like this. That's another thing I saw in the shows that drove me nuts. These guys were in such a hurry. Maybe it was some guy holding a camera telling them, quick, quick, take it apart as fast as you can. Okay, no need. There's the Makugi, the pin, out of the Makugiana, and see if it's a little tight. What one of the guys, the experts, was doing on the video is take your own wrist and it bounces up. Yes, that is the traditional proscribed way to do this. But I have also found what works is this. Without hitting anything, without having to hit anything, usually this is all it takes. Hold it in your left hand, you take your right hand, and you just squeeze. Oh, look, it's loose. I didn't have to bang the hell out of anything. So look, squeeze again, it's looser. And then when you're taking off the handle, you have to balance it out too. You have to put this hand more in the middle of the blade because you're going to lose weight on this side. Sometimes when people pull the handle off, the blade slides, tip forward, and they're like, oh, look, it fell. Like, no, don't do that. So hold it, take it off, and keep this whole assemblage with the tsuba and the seppa in order. Because when it went together, it probably went together in a certain order for a reason. Sometimes, especially the seppa, these little spacers, right? They only fit on. If they're tight, they'll fit tight here. They'll fit okay, and they won't fit like at all here. And you find that out the hard way. You don't find it out the hard way. All right, so this is also the Habaki design for these Yasukuni shrine swords. And I'll take it off and I'll show it to you in more detail. It slides off pretty easily. It tends to be this, now where's the camera? This silvery copper straight line design. That's the best way I could describe this, eh? Right? This is the design of the most of the Habaki used. And there's a swords made at the shrine have a 2-character signature and date. And they're signed Tachime, meaning if it were a katana, this would be the omote, the side facing out. But it's not. These swords are designed as tachi to be worn slung edge downwards. Oh, traditional tachi were. These swords, they're slung more like point downwards from a belt in war. But that's why the signature is Tachime. And this one is Yasu Nobu. And all the shrine swords made at the shrine have Yasu first, and then the smith name second, above the Mokugiana, above the hole. So, and you notice the file marks go straight ahead, right? Straight like this. I think that's Kiri. all the Yasukuni shrine swords also have file marks like that. Now it's a little different on the back, you'll notice. The file marks are a little different pattern. And here, straight across, it's this Kiri pattern. And on the other side is the date. I forget the exact date, but I know it's Showa and then the date. I had translated the date at some point. I'm sorry. I forget what they mean. I forget the date. But I'm not really terribly concerned with that. I'm more concerned with the quality and authenticity of the blade, which fits, matches, and it's actually still in really good shape. And again, you can touch the tang with your bare hands, but you also want to be careful. You just came from the beach or something, you may not want to do that. Make sure your hands are reasonably clean. And these tanks should have just one hole because it's doubtful that they would have been remounted since World War II. So I'm going to try to show more of the end of the tang also on any of the examples that I've seen has this shape. I forget the exact name of the shape, but there is a name to it, right? And again, I'm going to try to catch more camera angles here so I could show you. And I wish I had better lighting for this, but it does look more impressive, like I had said, up close. And I know I'm holding it edge downwards, but that's just to show you I'm not sliding it edge downwards, is what I meant before. That would be a bad idea. I'm holding it edge downwards just a little bit just to show some details. Yeah, good shape. It's perfectly straight. And now we can start to put it back together. And again, put this back together the order in which it came apart. And if you ever get confused, if they ever get mixed up, I don't know if you can see this on there. I'll hold it in front of the camera, but you might see like a little shadow just outside of this hole, of this opening. And that's where the habaki rested. Usually if you get confused, you might say, like, well, which spacer do I put on first? After the habaki, of course. Well, there's this shadow of where the habaki rested and kind of oxidized for a while. If you can see it there. And that gives you indication as to what should go on there first. And then this one. And make sure all these openings, you see this opening right here? Face the same way, because then it's going to back together the right way. Next, again, you're going to have to shift my balance on the left hand. And that. And the final seppa. And now for the handle. And what happens a lot is, see, it's not going on really tight now. That's okay. It doesn't have to. I have this resting on a towel down here, a pretty thick towel. So I'm not going to damage anything by doing that. I don't have to do too much. Now, again, the proscribed way to get this together is to hit up, because then it goes together. But I don't like hitting at all. I don't like hitting my own wrists, because if you misjudge the power, the sword could go flying out. Just, if you have something padded where you're not going to damage the Kashira, there you go. It's together. Done. Find your Makugi, and if you'll notice, see, that's the narrower end. That's the wider end. You want to put your narrower end first into the wider hole. Usually these handles have a hole that's wider. See, this one's bigger than this one. Don't put the narrow end into the narrow hole. You put the narrow end into the wider hole. This way it fits snugly in there. See? Ta-da! And before you put the blade away, make sure there's no oil marks, there's no moisture spots, Now, had oiled this blade previously, so I'm really not going to oil it again. Too much oil is just as bad as not enough oil. So, or it can be. So I'm going to wipe this down one more time just to make sure. No marks. Put this aside. Grab the scabbard. And again, especially if it's something you spent money on, you want to be careful with it. And it's historical. So I'll move back for this. I'm going to put this in tip first. Now the tip, don't go like ramming it in, because I've seen that in the swords. I mean, on the shows too. That drove me nuts. People are putting these things back in the scabbard like they're samurai or ninja and had to get back to the next fight. It's like, take your time. You're taking apart an antique. We're putting back an antique. All right, so take your time. See, the tip goes in. Rest it on there. Okay, now I know it's resting on the mune, on the backside only. And I'm looking down into the scabbard as much as I can to make sure I'm not grinding the bejesus out of the sides, putting this thing back together. Away. There we go. So now, I can handle it with both hands, put it down, and then put it away. All right, well, thank you everybody for this video, for having the time and attention and patience, and for dealing with my rants. This didn't apply to you, I'm sorry, and hopefully it can save you from making a grave error on an antique that's worth money. All right, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.